Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So we have once again come to the end of another rotation of the Cursed City, rotation 16, and I am happy to report that we once again got stuck in the early stages of Soul Cross Hard, so we didn't really get to explore much of the depths of this rotation, but the good news is, if you saw or paid attention to the thumbnail here, we did manage to finally solve one of the two stages that I've managed or not managed yet to beat. So we solved it for now, at least. It was very painful, and we'll come back to that a bit later. But as we normally kick things off here, I like to say that I am an endgame player for anyone who happens to be new. That means it is relatively easy for me to complete all of the lower stages of the Cursed City on hard mode, that being Cobble Market, Dead Rise, as well as Plague Home. And of course, I'm able to complete the entirety of normal mode, including Soul Cross there, not a problem, as well as being able to complete both forms of Amius. So we'll highlight those teams a little bit later as well. So let's dive right into my short-lived progression into Soul Cross Hard, starting off with Stage 1 Spirit Affinity Attack. We've seen this one before, and you can use a handful of different champions. I'm getting by with this team here, which is majority, I guess, rares and epics, and then Jetney was a previous fusion champion, but she's kind of in there for, she's unbooked, I should mention, but she's in there just as kind of a auxiliary DPS. But the notable things here, Fenax is just a Chad in terms of the damage you can put out. And the fact the ally attack is pretty fun, really synergizes well with Fenax's with block 5 on the A1. And then notably, I do have a stun set on Soulbond Boyer, who does have an AoE on her A1, so there's lots of chances to stun. And then Berserker is also in a stun set. So just it took a few goes to get that one down, but you know, eventually the RNG kind of lines up with the stuns and whatnot, and I was able to get through. Stage number 2, seen this one in the past before, but we're taking advantage of the fact that we have Allure in the mix, and she's kind of secretly a CC champion, her A2, which you don't usually use in other forms of PvE, but it is an AoE potentially sleep, as well as the weak versus decreased defense, so that can kind of lock out people out. And then as long as you use single target abilities on everyone else, the sleep can work as a serviceable debuff, at least when it comes to the Cursed City. But then we also have an unbooked Countess Lix in there for the AoE block active skills. Granted, it's on a 7-turn cooldown when unbooked, so basically she gets to use it once, maybe twice throughout the entirety of the waves, because it's just a ridiculously long cooldown. And then Halfrack, we're just using it at DPS. Ultimate Gaelic, kind of auxiliary DPS. And then Danax Golreap, who I built, I think, maybe last rotation of the Cursed City, but he's unbooked as well, but he's just kind of functioning as, once again, another DPS. Stage 3, this one is Force Attack, and you can see the team that we've got here. Lady Arash, really good, honestly, really good multipliers on her ability. She hits very hard and provides her own increased attack, which I find very useful. Thylesia here is notably in a stun set, but the AoE decreased defense is her more important skill. Pistivus is in there. He is unbooked, but he does have the potential to place block active skills, which again can be a form of CC, but also he's kind of backup AoE decreased defense. Soul Drinker is in there because he can place bombs out there. It's not the strongest bomb champion in the game, but he works for the purposes of the stage, and he definitely functions. And then, believe it or not, Thea the Tomb Angel here, she can do a little bit of damage on her own, but really we're just kind of taking advantage of her passive, where if you do enough damage to them, she also functions as CC, because as long as you do, I think, 30% of or more of their max HP in a single hit, and you have a 50% chance of placing a True Fear on anyone. So just by having a solid DPS team around her, you can potentially lock them out from their abilities with True Fear just by having her on the team. And as you can see, she doesn't even need to be ascended to have that aspect of her kit. I do plan to ascend her eventually, but as you might guess, it's not really mandatory for the success of this particular stage. Moving on, we have Stage 4 as well. This is just kind of Void Legendary abuse here in my case, but White King Narcy is kind of carrying the team. Arbiter keeping everyone alive. Dagger is functioning as her debuffer. AoE decreased defense. Skull Crown, secondary DPS. And then Soulless is tertiary DPS with a little bit of CC. Then we have the Iron Twins. I've showed this one in the past, but essentially we have the DPS champions, that being the Wukong, the Varl the Destroyer, as well as the Brimstone from the Gomlock Skyhide. And these three typically will end up dying throughout the course of the fight, just because he's building up the Iron Branch stacks and he starts to murder people once he gets below the threshold. And then after that, we have the high resistance, decent amount of accuracy core team of Tila Gormain and Wither the Crown, who basically never die, and HP Burns finish off the fight with her Brimstone functioning as well. Oh, and I guess it stands to reason to mention that, of course, Wukong does come back to life every 3 turns, so he's kind of DPS the entire way through. Failed to mention that. Moving on, we have stage 6, and this is the very, very important milestone for me in terms of my progression into the Cursed City. Finally, we managed to sort and solve this stage here. So the things to note here is that Gamaran came in clutch, but I did have to rebuild him. I'll show you guys the build later, but he was just getting CC'd in the old build, and with the new build, he was able to resist them. So a little bit of a hint there, but he was able to pretty much allow him to do what he needs to do. He's still unbooked, but just having the resistance on him allowed him to not be stunned and provoked and all these other things, true feared, and so he was just able to do it a lot better, or do his job a lot better, which is stealing buffs and placing occasional true fear here and there. But stun set on Abyssal, just like Soulbound Boyer, he has an AoE on the A1. Marquez is kind of functioning as our primary DPS in this case, which is just a really strong rare, especially if there's weaken out there and she can place it herself. Dur the Hunger is our support, primary support healer, not cleanser, but healer, reviver champion, and then Kyoku is just kind of the protection champion for the squad. Obviously, if I had a Duchess, this would be much easier to stay alive and protect the team from debuffs, and there are a lot of debuffs on the enemy waves. And then if I had a Helicath, it would also be a decent amount of damage that you can do from him, and you can also ignore shields, which is kind of important when you're discussing wave 2. But the main thing I want to point out to you guys is if we take a look at the best teams, you can see all the people in my clan with their Duchesses and their Helicaths and whatnot, and then we scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you can see my clear here with almost 500 turns, and this was a full manual slog that took over 22 minutes, slowly and painstakingly trying to work my way through each of the waves. I guess wave 1 wasn't too bad once I kind of figured out how to start getting through it, but wave 2 was just atrocious. There's so much healing and shielding and all this stuff, and there's just not enough CC across the entire team to really control them. But eventually we're able to kind of focus one champion down, take him out, and then slowly but surely we're able to take them all out. And then, Dur the Hunger again, MVP, keeping everyone healed and reviving people as necessary. But yeah, I solved the stage, but man, was it painful. It was a slog, but nonetheless it is solved. And so that leaves us with only one stage, at least in the this triangle, so to speak, that I'm not able to beat, which is this iteration of S8, which we'll come back to in a few seconds here. Stage 7, just want to point this out. I always shout him out, and I don't know if he's really appreciated as much as I'd like him to be, but Broodlord, AoE potential to stun, really, really strong. You don't have to run him in a stun set, but of course you can also use like the likes of Basilisk if you want to run him in a stun set, AoE on the A1. But in this case, we're bringing out the Lady Arash once again, really solid DPS. Doom Priest helps us cleanse, deals with the provokes and the freezes and the stuns and whatever else the enemy waves might do. And then we have Thylesi here once again, stun set, AoE decrease defense, and Rector is there to keep everyone alive and revive and healed up as necessary. And then the last stage that we were able to complete was stage 23. And once again, when it comes to these awakening stages, it's just highly dependent on who you have, who qualifies, and how many star ratings they have. But yeah, we're just using Narcisse here to kind of nuke him down, and then we're just surrounding him with a bunch of supports to kind of keep him going. But Mikage, of course, dual duty. She can be, ally attack champion, but Form 2 is really where I kept her, just, placing the stuns and kind of locking out the waves that way. A1 sleep from Siphi was pretty effective as well. And then Arbiter and Siphi keeping everyone alive and healed and whatnot, Debuffer and Gomlock, and then Narcisse laying down the smackdown. So that brings us to stage 8, and unfortunately I did bring or build up Jamarza last time in hopes that she would help me solve this particular iteration, but it didn't really pan out. Wave 1 is just absolutely brutal, and I honestly don't know what people are doing. Like, shout out to RuPaul once again, making his way through the stage, but this stage is just atrocious. And I know like the best teams are just using or abusing, I should say, Allah's the Sunbearer, but I'd really like to see like what do like people that are not like the best of the best, but people that don't have Allah's but still beat it. I'd like to know more of what other people have done to get the stage done. But yeah, I have a provoke set on Sentinel. I do use him in Magma Dragon, and so every once in a while he might provoke all of them, but most of the time I would just restart the fight if I didn't get like 3 or 4 provokes, and even from there it usually would fall apart. There's too many freezes, you get frozen by the rays, you get debuffed by the Lydia, and she can block revive if you try to revive people. There's a block revive in Queen Ava, so if she gets a turn she just takes somebody out, and it's just so painful. And basically the only DPS I have in this squad is either Baroth the Bloodsoaked or just the HP burn from Mordecai, and it's too slow. They do so much damage so quickly, and it's just no way around it. I don't know, we need like a cleanser that would cleanser block debuffs, but even then, I mean, maybe you could run them in protection, But I don't know. I feel like we need more champions who fit into this mold, particularly hopefully legendaries, just because they're going to have more stuff in their kits. So maybe some fusion in the future is going to help me with the stage. But for now, I'm basically hard stuck and I don't really have a solution. And I'm hoping that I can come up with something eventually. But for the foreseeable future, this version of S8 will stop me every single time. So kind of disheartening, but nonetheless, that is how it's going to be. So now let's take a quick look at my teams that I used to beat Amius in this case. And most of these are going to be stuff that we've seen before if you've been watching this series long term. But here we have my Amius team on hard mode. We have our primary DPS in Nishak, where we're using the bombs as well as the poison or the poisons which the bombs turn into is our primary DPS. We have Aostrid in there. She's serving as our buff bait champion with the increased attack, but also Brimstone just because it can't be removed, or I guess it doesn't really matter, it doesn't cleanse himself. But Brimstone there. OL as being our primary healer. Pythion is our cleanser slash secondary healer and slash reviving champion. And then of course hero reduction champion being Venomage. And then if we take a look on normal mode for that Amius team, this is a lot more aggressive. I was just kind of having fun at this point just to kind of see what I could get away with. But yeah, Riho Bone Spear was serving as kind of like the healer cleanser for the team, protecting us from the stun. And then Mikage was just abusing her ally attack. And then just kind of DPSing down the boss as quickly as possible, just to kind of see. I don't think I was the fastest in my clan just because, yeah, some people, yeah, when this Uber has Toshiro, I guess, yeah, 2 people have Toshiro. These guys are using, I think Thor is probably the more powerful on their accounts. But I came in close, 41 turns. But yeah, at this point, you know, just more for fun. This is not a serviceable team by any means, but I just have such strong DPS that we can just kind of DPS him down in Form 1 before he even transforms. Maybe he transformed once, I forget exactly. But yeah, just having fun with this team. This is not a real team. We're not worrying about the mechanics of the boss at all. We're just DPSing him down. But you know, again, if you get to the end game, this is something that you could pull off, especially if you have Mikage surrounded by a couple of decent champions. But if you wanted recommendations for like a realistic team that you could use, then like Kaj of the Rise, a good shout for like the healer, cleanser, reviver champion. Hero reduction options are, I believe, like Lauren the Cutter has it, Old Gruckus has it, so they can work as well, and that can kind of be your foundation for building a team from there. But yeah, that's if you want to do it the boring way. The fun way is way more fun if you have a bunch of DPS. In terms of the champion built and or rebuilt for this particular rotation of the Cursed City, I'll highlight a couple of them. One of them was freshly built. She was not featured in any of the Soulcross hard stages, but I did make use of her in some, I think, Plagueholm on hard mode. But it is Frenzy the Cackler, and I kind of ignored her for probably too long, honestly. The most useful part of her kit when it comes to the Cursed City is that she has an AoE provoked that's on a 4-turn cooldown when provoked, or when booked, and she is a Void Affinity champion, so you don't have to worry about weak hits. So again, any form of CC is better than no form of CC. So just having a little bit of a CC from that, increased defense on herself, just helps her to stay alive once she takes the damage from other people. And then I built her, as you might have guessed or might have seen here, I built her in a Merciless set. I guess 5 pieces apparently. I don't know what would happen there, but I think she's supposed to be in a 4-piece Merciless and 2-piece Immortal, but I guess I messed up the build. But regardless, she is in Merciless. That's just a chance to reduce the cooldowns whenever she attacks, and she does attack on every single one of her abilities. So it just helps us get back to the provoke quicker, i.e. it's slightly on a lower cooldown than a 4-turn cooldown whenever we just get lucky with good RNG. And then the other star of the show in terms of beating stage 6 was the rebuilt Gamaran, whose kind of calling card here is just this ability here. 80% chance when unbooked, and you can note here that he is unbooked, but he can steal all buffs from all enemies and spread them to all allies, which is very, very useful. Again, very handy for stealing the shield, stealing continuous heal, stealing counterattack was also very handy because he could steal counterattack, put it on Abyssal specifically, and whenever he would get hit, he would counterattack and have a chance to stun with his AoE on the A1. And then he has a chance to place, or he can place block revive, but we don't have to worry about that. There weren't that many revivers. But more importantly, he can just place a true fear on a target for 2 turns, and maybe that might help survive a little bit. And then I forgot to mention, but he also does have block active skills on the A1. It's a very low chance when it's unbooked, but nonetheless, in a pinch, it came in clutch a couple of times to just kind of lock out, you know, the last 1 or 2 targets just with block active skills. But the main thing to highlight here is that, like I said, he's built in high accuracy and high resistance. So accuracy set, 2 pieces of stone skin, which is effectively a resistance set, the resistance set itself, and then then 1 piece of Pharaoh for the extra accuracy. So all of that culminates into these stats here: 62,000 on the HP, 3,500 on the defense, 232 on the speed, and then 450 on the resistance. That is what is required to resist most of the stuff that the waves are going to put out there. Granted, some of the enemies on those waves do have increased accuracy, so you got to be careful with that, and they can kind of overcome this high resistance anyways with increased accuracy, but I digress. And then 350 on his accuracy to make sure that he can still land his debuffs while resisting everyone else's. So the rebuild here, I think I had him before in like 4P Supersonic, and my thought was to be like, oh, he can steal the buffs and spread it around, so Supersonic would give him a bunch of turn meter when they buff up, and he could steal them all, and blah blah blah. That was kind of the plan. But what ended up happening was that, like I said, he would just get CC'd into oblivion, like with everyone else on the squad, aside from I think Dur and Kyoku have a little bit of resistance in their kits. But he would get feared, he would get stunned, he would get decreased accuracy on, which means he couldn't do anything because he had too low accuracy at that point, and so it was just absolutely miserable. So the rebuild came in clutch, and again, it's a super slow full manual run, but nonetheless, a clear is a clear. And just like the early days of manualing through Doom Tower, this is just how it starts, and eventually, hopefully, you get better and better champions, better suited to beating stages that you took forever in the past. So there you have it. That's going to do it for my progression this rotation into the Cursed City. Once again, stopped by the impenetrable S8, specifically this version of it. Every single other version of Stage 6 and Stage 8 I've actually managed to beat, especially with the new found ground or new broken ground with this particular rotation. But this one, I don't know. I'm very confused. I'm curious if you guys have managed to beat this version of S8. Let me know what you've done. Is it just like everyone in a stun set and pray and hope? I really don't want to resort to that, but we'll see if that becomes what's required in the future. I know Bolster could potentially come in handy just to kind of protect your buffs so you don't get them stripped off, but free-to-play player here, so Bolster does not really exist, unfortunately. Forge Pass comes around once every 6 months or whatever for Bolster, so it's very few and far in between. But yeah, let me know if you're able to beat this stage in the comment section down below, and I'm curious how far you made it in your progression in the Cursed City as well. As always, if you did enjoy this video, then be sure to hit that like button down below, and if you are enjoying the content overall on the channel, then feel free to hit that subscribe button down below as well for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.